ما شاء الله لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل، نعم المولى ونعم النصير. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكره وسببا للمزيد من فضله ودليلا على آلائه وعظمته، ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على النبي الأمي المكي المدني الهاشمي الذي اسمه في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرضين بأبي القاسم محمد. وعلى الجوهرة القدسية البتول الأزراء فاطمة الزهراء صلوات الله وسلامه عليها. اللهم صل على وبعلها أمير المؤمنين وقائد الغر المحجلين وبنيها الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. ورحمة الله على محبيهم ومواليهم وشيعتهم أجمعين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم وقتلتهم وغاصب حقوقهم ومنكري فضائلهم ملعونين. Amma ba'd, for the happiness of Hazrat Zahra Marziyah, for the enlightenment of the graves of your marhumin, of the graves of the Shuhada, Ulama and Siddiqeen, for the safety of the followers of Ahl al-Bayt around the world, and for the safety and the hastening of the reappearance of Hazrat Baqiyatullah al-A'zam, Arwahun al-Fida, please recite your loudest salawat. All praise due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who's Rahman and the one who's Rahim. For the past couple of nights, we have been looking at this narration from the Holy Prophet of Islam, where he says that indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is angry with the anger of Zahra, and he is happy with the happiness of Zahra. And we began looking at what are those things that are anger worthy. Because generally, we look at anger as being something that is reprehensible. And in most cases, it is. Bar a handful. And we said when we analyze all of the different times and the different places where the A'imma alayhimus salam have become angry, we can summarize them into 5. The first, when one's rights are being trampled, or when we see that the haqq is being belied, where people are turning away from the haqq, where people are taking the rights of others, at that point, it is required that the human being become angry, that they raise a voice. They show their anger and we spoke about the different ways very briefly. Either it's through their words, through their dua, through their actions. They make their anger known. The second is when bid'ah, innovation, becomes rife within society. When people begin to innovate, add things to the religion. And then the last thing that we spoke about last night, that was that when an individual does not respect the sanctity of those things that are sacred in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we said those that are sacred, according to the narration of the 6th Imam, is what? The Holy Prophet, Ali Rasulullah, the family of the Prophet, the book of Allah, the Kaaba, and the mu'min. These are those things that are the muqaddasat. And anything associated to them also becomes muqaddas. Hence when we spoke about the sha'air of Abi Abdullah, these alams, these tabuts, these marasim of azad that we have, these are all sha'air and they all become muqaddas. So one has to be very careful when they are questioning the azah or anything that is associated to the sha'air of Abi Abdullah. The fourth place where an individual should become angry, and inshallah today we will finish all 5 points, so 4 and 5 inshallah will complete today. The fourth place where a person should become angry is when sin has become commonplace within a community. When sin is being brought out into the public. At that point, a person must become angry in the face of these misdemeanors or of these sins that people are committing. And really we don't care anymore. Sin has become so common. And at times, we bring that sin in even to the masajid, even to our Husayniyas. It just becomes part and parcel of who we are. I am a racist. It's just part and parcel of who I am. I look down at other races. I consider my race superior to any other race. I don't think of it as a sin. But asabiyya is. So when it becomes commonplace in a community, in a society, at that point a person should be angry. At that point a person should make their anger known, their upset known. Be it through their actions, through their du'as, through their words. But the fact of the matter is that we have become so apathetic in the face of these sins that really we just don't care. When it comes to, I don't know, a football match, you guys call it soccer, right? So a soccer match, and my team isn't winning for some reason, I don't know why, but they're not winning. And you see how people react, how angry they get. Their team loses, they start throwing things, they start screaming and shouting, jumping around like hooligans. As if they themselves were playing the game. And you talk to them afterwards and they're like, oh, what we did wrong. And I'm like, oh, what position were you playing? Well, I wasn't playing any position, I was just a supporter. So why are you so vested in it? Why is so much of your time and effort and energy vested in something that you have no influence on? But they get so angry when their team does not perform as they should. But when it comes to the religion, and it comes to sin being incorporated within the family structure, within the masajid, within a community, at that point, they don't care. They will scream and shout about the misdemeanors of their football or soccer team, but they won't care that the fact that their cousin was playing music at their wedding, or that there were big dance parties happening at their brother's wedding. At that point, they won't care. But someone thousands of miles away, getting paid whatever, obscene amount of money, and they're more bothered about that. See, this is when shaitan has really taken hold of an individual, of a community, of a society, that they become apathetic towards that sin. And in fact, the people that call out that sin, that actually become angry, become the outliers or the black sheeps or the deviants. Like, what's your problem? Why are you calling out? What are you so concerned about if there was music at the wedding? Because we don't have that sacredness left to us. All that sacredness that was there, it was gone, because it's now replaced with hubb ad-dunya, the love of this world. Whereas if a person really was angry that the religion was being destroyed, that the sunnah of the Prophet wasn't being followed, that the sunnah of the imams and the teachings of the Quran were being trampled under the feet of the people, then they would be like Habib Najjar that Surah Yasin speaks about. وَجَاءَ مِنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ رَجُلٌ يَسْعَى قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ اتَّبِعُوا الْمُرْسَلِينَ. A man came running from outside of the city, said to them, obey the prophets. They turned around to him and said, listen, what are you talking about? Who do you think you are? The mu'min of Ali Yasin? So what did they do to him? They turn around and they kill him. They attack him and they kill him. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? قِيلَ ادْخُلِ الْجَنَّةِ. Says Habib Najjar, you cared about your community. You cared about their sinning. You wanted to raise a voice in the face of all of this deviation, because you lifted your head above the parapet and went out of your comfort zone in order to guide those that were misguided, even if it was through your words. For you, Habib Najjar, قِيلَ ادْخُلِ الْجَنَّةِ. There is no questioning for you. There is no munkar and nakir for you. There is none of this. You enter straight into heaven. And then what does he say? قَالَ يَا لَيْتَ قَوْمِي يَعْلَمُونَ. This is what it means to have that pain of a nation. He says, how I wish my people had just understood. He was still feeling sorry for his people. He was still feeling sad that they were going to end up in hell. But we don't have that pain. And so then sin takes root in the community and it becomes common. It's okay. There's no beard, and there's no hijab, and there's all of these. So it's okay. We live in the West. Because sin becomes commonplace. When sin becomes commonplace, it is the duty of those that are the believers that they raise their voices in anger in the face of that sin. If they can't do anything with their actions, at the very least, they do a dua for the guidance of those people. So when sin becomes a commonplace within a community, within a society, that is the place where sacred anger must be shown. That sacred anger. And anger isn't just shouting and screaming. No, it can just be in your heart for the injustices that are happening. When justice is established within the wujud of a person, within the existence of a person, then I don't look at whether this person is my friend or this person is my brother. What they are doing is wrong. It is wrong. And they'll call a spade a spade. And there's no better example of that than Amirul Mu'mineen. There's no better example than that. Najashi is the poet of Amirul Mu'mineen, the sha'ir of Amirul Mu'mineen, the maddah of Amirul Mu'mineen, all the time reciting poetry about Imam Ali, reciting his fada'il, his virtues. One day Najashi meets an old friend in Shahr Ramadan. He's walking towards the masjid to go and pray Salat al-Jama'ah. Meets an old friend from back in the day. His friend says to him, Najashi, where are you going? Says, going to the masjid, it's almost time for salah. Says, Najashi, there's so much time left for the salah yet. What's your hurry? Come, we haven't seen each other for so long. Let's kick back. You've got enough time, you'll reach Jama'ah. Najashi says, okay. So this friend of his takes him home. They're sitting back, kicking back, and they bring food in front of Najashi. Najashi says, Shah Ramadan. Says, come on, man, it's all right, eat, relax. Aman from bad friends. Allah keep us safe from bad friends. Najashi says, all right, then one bite won't hurt. One bite turns into the whole meal. And then the guy says, okay, well, for some dessert, I have some wine. And he brings it in, he puts it on the table. Najashi's like, what the hell? I've already eaten. Let's go. Drinks the wine. Now he leaves the house drunk. They find him, they bring him to Amirul Mu'mineen. Imam Ali alayhi salam says, 100 lashes is the punishment of Najashi. 50 for alcohol, 50 for breaking the fast. Puts him in prison for the night. Next morning is when Najashi will be given the punishment. The tribesmen of Najashi come to Amir al-Mu'mineen. Ya Ali, this is your maddah, this is your sha'ir, this is your lover. Ya Ali, if you whip him tomorrow, then what will happen is that he will go towards Muawiyah. Ya Ali, don't do this, he's one of your people. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, I cannot change the hudud of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I cannot change the boundaries of God. Najashi is brought. The punishment is administered. He gets up and he runs to Sham. Muawiyah says, Najashi, where have you come? He says, I've come running from the justice of Ali to seek refuge in your oppression. The hudud of Allah cannot change. One example, when justice is established. Haqq is haqq, batil is batil. You all know Qanbar. Qanbar is the slave of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He was always with Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen raised Qanbar. There's a man that has to be given the punishment for whatever the crime was. And Qanbar is given the whip, administered the punishment. It was 50 or 30, whatever it was. Qanbar begins, gets a bit excited and does 10 extra. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, give me the whip. Takes the whip. Says, Qanbar, take off your top. Says to the man that was just whipped, take this whip. Says, whip Qanbar 10 times. Ya Ali, why? This is Qanbar. Your servant, your slave. No, haqq is haqq. Justice is justice. He was only supposed to be given 30. Why did you give him 10 extra? For those 10 extra that you gave him, you must pay. For us, this is very difficult to comprehend. It's very difficult. Probably sitting there going, oh my God. Because our sensitivities, our worldview has been formed, or our moral compass has been molded by that which is not divine. We have taken to going to isms and ists to take our moral guidance. And so these things, when we look at them, we're like, they're abhorrent. Why? Because our aqa'id are not strong. Our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not strong. And so that's why you see the biggest of Shi'as throws a wedding and he has music and dancing and hijab is not present there. Everyone is there doing everything that is haram. And the next day they're at masjid. Ilahi wa sayyidi wa mawlai. Because we've created that cognitive dissonance between the deen and our dunya. So the fourth place where anger must be shown is in the face of sin that is becoming public. When sin is done in closed doors, behind four walls, even in an Islamic government, there's no concern of the government. Even in the presence of the Imam. You know, the famous story of the second Khalifa, where he jumps over the wall of someone and catches them committing adultery. And he's about to punish them, and Amir al-Mu'mineen comes. Says, how did you find them committing adultery? How did you determine this? He says, I jumped over the wall, caught them in the act. He says, then what you did was haram. You can't punish them. What they were doing with their sin was in the four walls of their home. See, it's when the sin becomes public, when the fasad comes out into the public, that deviation becomes public. At that point, that anger must be there within the people, trying to stop that sin. The fifth place for anger that we find in riwayat is that anger in the face of corrupt officials, government officials, or leaders of a community. During the time of the Imams, you have individuals that were put in positions of power as governors, for example. Amir al-Mu'mineen put Munzir ibn Jarud as a governor, and Munzir ibn Jarud stole 400,000 dirham from Baytul Mal. Imam Ali alayhi salam says, Munzir ibn Jarud, you took this money. He made him pay it back, fined him on top of that, and then threw him in prison. Other governors during the time, look at Nahjul Balagha, how Amir al-Mu'mineen writes to them. He says, put them in prison, only let them out to pray salah, then put them back in prison. When there are corrupt officials, that is the place for a person to show anger. Uthman ibn Hunayf, Amir al-Mu'mineen, the letter is there in Nahjul Balagha. He goes to dinner with the rich of the city. Imam Ali writes him a scathing letter. Says, Uthman ibn Hunayf, it has come to my knowledge that you went to the banquet of the rich. And you sat with them and there were large plates in front of you and many different types of food were served to you. Says, no, that I, Ali, do not like this. I know that you cannot live like me, but at the very least help me, aid me through your abstinence and through striving to be better. So corrupting officials, leaders of communities. And one has to look at what is the criterion of a leader of a community, of a society. Who are we electing to be the leaders of, I don't know if you take wider society or communities? Those people fulfill what it is that the Quran is saying? There are many different times the Holy Quran speaks about the characteristics of a leader. Courage, knowledge, in regards to Talut, the Holy Quran says. But when there is a corrupt leadership in place, it leads to the degradation of that society. No better example of it is post the Holy Prophet. When corrupt leadership is placed, then it leads to that degradation of society. It happens. So one place where a person should be angry is when there are corrupt officials or leaders in government or within institutions. So those 5 things in regards to the ghadab of Hazrat Zahra. But the narration doesn't end there. It says, وَيَرْضَى لِرِضَاهَا, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is happy, is pleased with that which Zahra is pleased with, or whoever Zahra is pleased with. And what is it that makes Zahra alayha salam happy? What is it that makes her, what is it that she loves? Because then we can analyze our lives and think, because that is the criteria of love, that the lover do what the beloved loves as well. Or at the very least do something that would make the beloved happy. And more than likely it is what the beloved likes to do. The lover also molds himself into that way. So what is it that she, salamullah alayha, loves from this dunya? There is a narration where she says, حُبَّبَ إِلَيَّ مِن دُنْيَاكُمْ ثَلَاث. There is 3 things that Zahra loves from your dunya. Note the wording, from your dunya. Remember on the first night I said, Zahra is Hawra al-Insiyya. She is a hur in human form. The 6th Imam says, Zahra is not of this world. So then she says to you, she says, I love from your dunya 3 things. What are those 3 things? The first, tilawatu kitabillah, reciting the Quran. Yesterday we briefly mentioned, what is my relationship with the Holy Quran? Is it that I just recite it when someone dies? Or in Shahr Ramadan, because I don't want to look like I haven't recited Quran throughout the whole year. So 1 week before Shahr Ramadan, I pick up the Quran and start practicing again, trying to get my Quran more fluent. So nobody picks up that, in Quran Khani when we sit down, then nobody picks up that I haven't been reciting my Quran throughout the year. So it says that, what is my relationship with that Quran? Is the Quran only when someone dies or when Shahr Ramadan comes, and then, in Shahr Ramadan, I think, yes, I'm going to recite the Holy Quran, I feel great about it. And then Eid comes and there goes the Quran and all dua and everything, mashallah, back on the shelf to gather dust for another year or until the next family member dies. The Quran is a book of guidance. I remember speaking to one of the ulama, and he was giving an example. One of the teachers, he was saying, in the UK, I'm sure you guys have a theory test for your driving here as well. We have to go through all the signs and stop here and turn here and don't do this there and make sure you indicate, and this sort of line in the road means you can't do this. So the highway code says, imagine if someone was to have a car crash and they're there bleeding out, dying, dead from this car crash, and you go and sit next to them and pick up the highway code and start reading to them, you should have braked. You should have left a 2-meter gap between you and the car in front. It was raining, so that gap should have been increased to 4 meters. Well, people say, this is crazy. What is wrong with you? So, oh, look. I thought it was relevant. So I'm just reading from the highway code. He died in a car crash. Read from the highway code. Says this is exactly what we do with the Holy Quran. I don't read it for myself. I sit by the dead person and I'm sitting there telling them there is this dunya and these children in the dunya will be fasad for you, will be a test for you. These tests will come in the dunya and these tests will come in the dunya. It's over for him. But what about me? This Quran comes as a guidance for me, not as the book of the dead. In one of the narrations of the Holy Prophet, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, when he's talking about Akhir Zaman, he says, Ya'ti ala nasi zaman. There will come a time upon the people. And he begins to list a bunch of different things. One of the things that he says, La min al-Quran illa darsu. Nothing will remain of the Holy Quran but the dars of it. I.e., people will send their children to go and learn how to recite the Holy Quran. And then when they finish the Holy Quran 30 chapters later, then they'll throw a big party for them. MashaAllah, my son finished the Quran. And so now, like his father, can just sit there and never read it again. See how we create this mindset. We're like, you finished the Quran, hooray, congratulations. Let's have a cake and a party and everything, and everybody come and celebrate. My child has finished the Quran. But the Quran is something that does not finish. I'm not saying don't celebrate that your child has completed his first reading of the Holy Quran. But alongside that, because we see what the effect of that is already. We all had parties when we finished the Quran when we were younger. And then after that, we were like, okay, cool. Nobody else at home is reciting Quran. I don't need to recite it. Because subconsciously we're telling our children, look, reciting Quran, learning how to recite Quran is a child's game. You do this when you're an adult, just like me, you won't ever have to pick it up again. Just get through this. Just a few more lessons. And you won't have to pick it up again. And then unfortunately, when dad has to pick up that Quran, it is embarrassing to say the least. All the qawa'id of the Quran, of the Arabic, are being destroyed. Have no relationship with the Holy Quran. That Quran will come as a guide for us, as a companion for us in the grave. That Quran will stand and bear witness for us on Yawm al-Qiyamah. But I don't have any sort of relationship with it. Zahra Marziya is saying that I love reciting the book of Allah. Then how can her Shia, how can her Muhib not love reciting Quran? Not have a relationship with it, not even pick up just 5 ayat a day. Just to keep that connection with the book of God. Just 5 ayat. Make it a challenge for yourself. 5 ayat every day for the next 2 weeks. For the next 2 weeks. Challenge yourself. And now we don't even need to, before it used to be, it makes me feel good that the Quran, is protection, it is hirs for us. You know, someone's going on a journey where like, Bismillah. Okay, that has its benefit. But you yourself reciting, just don't wait for your mum to come and blow on you and because then you'll be under the protection and walk under the Quran 5 times. No, recite it. People hang it in their rear view mirrors of their cars, and then I've been in a car crash where there was a Quran hanging in the rear view mirror. I was like, reciting it is what will protect you, not wearing the thing around your neck or hanging it in your rear view mirror. We have this odd relationship with the Book of Allah. Maybe one time Laylatul Qadr will stick it on our heads and that's about it. But that Quran, if we create a relationship with it, Nahj al-Balagha Amir al-Mu'mineen has a beautiful khutbah where he speaks about the Quran, something like 57 virtues of the Quran Amir al-Mu'mineen lists. Says this is a cure after which there will be no disease. This is a fountain that will quench the thirst of those that are thirsty. Or this is a fountain after which there is no thirst. This is that place where the scholars come to seek. No matter how many times you read the Holy Quran, there will always be a different side to it. People often say like, oh, can you give us some books to read? And I remember one of the ulama was saying that someone came up to him and said, can you give me a book to read? Something that would increase my spirituality. Because we all like that, I can float and things like that. So increase my spirituality. Because, we like shortcuts to the spiritual realms. So it says, Quran. Sheikhana, look, mashallah, Quran, great, yeah. But something else. It says Quran. Says that, look, I know Quran is great and everything, but, something mystical, something. It says Quran. Says, you keep on saying Quran, but yes, I know the Quran. He says, look, excuse me, could you just go and get me a glass of water? The young man says, okay. He goes, brings a glass of water, and he gives him the Sheikh, this is for you. So Sheikh, he takes the glass of water, begins to drink it. He says, excuse me, let me just ask you a question. This glass, the water that's in this glass, is this all there was in the tap? What do you mean? He says that this amount, this 300 milliliters of water that you poured into this glass, is this all there was in the tap? He says, no, the tap head obviously is connected to the mains water supply, is practically unlimited. He says, but you only brought me this much. He says, yes, because the glass could only take that much. He says, so the glass has only the capacity for 300 mil. Thus you only brought me 300 mil of water. He says, yes. He says, that is exactly the same with the Holy Quran. Quran itself is unfathomable. The Quran has no bottom. You can't reach the depths of the Holy Quran. It is the fact that you do not have that expansiveness. You haven't brought that, you haven't increased your volume. Thus, when you look at the Quran, you're like, it's the same thing. But when you begin to increase your own spiritual volume, sharh sadr, when you begin to expand that spiritual chest, that spiritual heart of yours, then the Quran will begin to have deeper meanings. So the first thing she says is, tilawatu kitabillah, recitation of the Holy Quran. The second says, وَالنَّظَرُ فِي وَجْهِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. The second thing Zahra Marziya loves is to look at the face of Rasulullah. Now we can't The Holy Prophet has left us. But Yusuf Zahra is still here. The Imam of our time is there. أولنا محمد وآخرنا محمد وأوسطنا محمد. The first of them is Muhammad. The last of them. The middle of them. وكلنا محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. And all of us are Muhammad. Every single one of them. So the Imam of our time. How many times have we thought that I just want to see him? I do the dua, Allahumma kulli waliyik al-hamd. But really, if he turned up, before ulama, when we were younger, would give examples. Would you invite the Imam to your home? And he would see the cassettes of the music and the various things that you have. Would you be ashamed? Our elders will remember, a lot of Urdu ulama would give this example. Let's bring it to the modern day. Forget even calling Imam to your home, because nobody calls anyone to their home nowadays. And alhamdulillah, COVID has given us the perfect excuse not to have any guests. But aside from that, forget even calling anyone home. Would you hand the Imam your phone and give him your password? Would you be happy to do that? Would you be, not, the moment someone else picks up my phone, my palms start sweating, my heart rate starts going up. It's like, oh no, just don't open my Snapchat. Yeah? Don't open my Messenger. So would we be happy to see him? I don't know. The narrations, they say that when he reappears, his Shi'as will write him letters, go back to where you came from, we don't need you. Why have you come? Not his Shi'as, those that spent their whole life saying, Allahumma ajjil li waliyik al-faraj. Those that awaited him. And the polytheists and the disbelievers will be the first to accept him. Khair, that desire to see the face of the Imam, for he's the manifestation of the Holy Prophet. The third thing, she says, وَالْإِنفَاقِ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. The third thing that Zahra loves is to give in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Surah Al-Dahr. All of those that are there, all of this is for Zahra alayhi salam. She says, Allah subhanahu, she gives in the way of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives her so much. What do I like giving in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? I see someone begging in the street, and I make sure that, I look for the smallest change in my pocket. God forbid a bill came out. God forbid a big bill comes out and I have to give this beggar that. Infaq fi sabilillah, but only of the things that I don't need. Whereas the Holy Quran says that you will not achieve righteousness until you give from that which you love. The interesting narration, they say that someone came to the sixth Imam and said, Ya ibn Rasulillah, could you give me a gift, something? And so the Imam, either it was a beggar or someone just came to the Imam asking. So the Imam took sugar and gave him sugar. And the companion that was with the Imam says, Ya ibn Rasulillah, you're giving sugar? Like, it's a bit of an odd thing. He says, no, the Holy Quran says that you will not achieve righteousness until you give from that which you truly love. And he says, I really like sugar. I really love sugar and sweet things. So I gave him sugar. But would I be willing to give that which I love? Would I be willing to part with that which I love? Zahra Marziya had no food in the house. And she still, whatever little, after fasting for 3 days, whatever they had, the beggar comes, the destitute comes, and they give. In the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That altruism that exists within Zahra. And you know, in that altruism, it extends to this day to you. She was getting married and she called her father, Ya Rasulullah, is it possible that I could get a different mahar, another mahar? The Holy Prophet says, Zahra, are you not satisfied with the mahar that Ali has said? Says, no, Ya Rasulullah, the mahar that I want is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Zahra, what do you want? Says, O Father, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give me the haqq al-shifa'ah for the sinners from your ummah. Jibreel comes down with a piece of paper. Zahra is given the ability to intercede for the sinners of the ummah of her father. And so when she was giving her last will to Amirul Mu'mineen, she said to him, Ya Ali, bury this with me, this piece of paper. Zahiran, Amirul Mu'mineen himself hadn't seen this paper before. He said, Ali, bury this with me. And then in her last days, you know, the riwayat say, in her last days, she recited a dua. And again, she remembered us. Rib broken. The arm has been whipped. The child has been lost. But she still remembered each and every one of us. Ilahi wa Sayyidi. She begins her dua. As'aluka billadhina istafaytahum. I ask you for the sake of the awliya, the anbiya, those that you selected. وَبِبُكَاءِ وَلَدِي فِي مَفَارِقَتِي. And I ask you for the sake of the crying, the wailing of my children when they will be separated from me. Forgive the sins of our Shi'as and those from the lineage of our Shi'as. Zahra remembered each and every one of you, even at that time. That haqq al-shifa'ah that she had. How is it that she spent these days? I saw a narration that said that someone came to the sixth Imam and they said to him, Ya Ibn Rasulillah, we have seen a narration from Imam al-Hassan that he would at times in the middle of the night get up to get water. And he would see his mother Zahra sitting up against the wall with her head against the wall. And her chadar would be over her face or sometimes to the side where he would see one of her eyes and realize that his mother is sleeping in this way. Ya Ibn Rasulillah, we heard that your grandmother Fatima Zahra was ill in her last days. Why is it that she was sleeping with her back to the wall? Why didn't she lay down and sleep? Imam al-Sadiq begins to cry. He says, because if she was to lay on one side, the wound of the whip of Conforth wouldn't allow her to lay. If she laid on the other side, that broken womb of hers wouldn't allow her to lay. And if she were to lay on her back, the broken rib would not allow her to breathe properly. So my grandmother Zahra would sleep leaning against the wall. Zahra, for days, she was not coming towards her children. The children would see her unable to stand, unable to do much. They would see her reciting Quran, crying. Reciting salah, crying, doing dua, crying. It's difficult, young children. Zainab, Kulthum, seeing their mother. But one day they say, Then as Amir al-Mu'mineen came, he saw that Zahra was up. She was cleaning, she was getting the children ready, she was brushing the hair of Hasanayn alayhimus salam. He saw her, he said, Zahra, alhamdulillah, you seem better. Alhamdulillah, you seem like you've improved. Amir al-Mu'mineen's happiness was short-lived because Zahra said to him, Ya Ali, come inside the room. Says, what is it, Zahra? She says that I saw my father in a dream, and he told me that soon I would be joining him. On this day, Ali, I will be joining my father. She says, I wanted to prepare my children one last time. I wanted to tidy the house and prepare everything one last time. Amir al-Mu'mineen looks towards her. He begins to cry, says, Zahra, what are you saying? Zahra was so dear to Ali. There are so many riwayat, so many narrations. Zahra was so dear to Amir al-Mu'mineen. I said to you that, when he would enter, she would run to him. Nafsi lak al-fida ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Every time he would enter the house. She said to him, Ya Ali, if I have done anything to hurt you, Ya Ali, forgive me. Says, Zahra, what are these words that you are saying? Ulama say in those days, Amir al-Mu'mineen during those times, he would never look Hazrat Zahra in the eyes because there was a sense of shame that Ali had to bear with him, seeing his wife in such a state that the Muslims had come to the door of the conqueror of Khaybar and he had to stay silent while they disrespected his wife. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says that my father Ali was awwalul madhloom. He says, yes, my grandfather Abi Abdullah, yes, his musibah was great. His sorrows were great. The oppression that he faced were great. But he says that the oppressions faced by Amir al-Mu'mineen and Zahra were greater. Why? Because in those last moments when Abi Abdullah lay upon the ground, bleeding, unable to sit himself up, unable to stand, he lay on the ground motionless. No one would go near him. No one would approach him. They didn't know whether Hussein was alive or dead. They were throwing stones at him from afar. No one dared go near him. One mal'oon said, there is only one way to find out whether Hussein is alive or not. Go, run your horses towards the tents of the daughters of Hussein, of the women of Hussein. Call out that we are about to loot and burn the tents of the daughters of Ali and Zahra. Says the moment that they did this, Abu Abdullah gathered whatever last strength he had in his body, reached for a broken spear and lifted himself to his knees. He called out to them that if you have no religion and you don't fear the day of judgment, kunu ahraran fi dunyakum, at least be free men in this world. He was saying to them, don't attack my women in front of me while I, Hussein, am alive. Imam al-Sadiq says Ali is a greater madhloom than Hussein in Karbala, because Hussein, while he was alive, they didn't attack his women, but Ali had to watch as his wife Zahra was slapped and whipped in front of him. Amir al-Mu'mineen sits by Zahra, he cries. They sit quietly for a while. Zahra says to him, Ya Ali, amongst all of the different parts of her will, one of the things she says to him, says, Ya Ali, when I go, make sure you don't leave me alone after you've buried me. Sit by my grave, Ya Ali. Recite Quran for me, Ya Ali. Ali, after I go, you will cry. But Ali, I want you to separate your crying into two parts. وَابْكِنِي, cry for me, but also cry for my orphan children that I have left behind. Cry for my Zainab that is left behind. But Ali, know that there should be one specific cry that you do, and do that for my Madhloom Hussein that will be killed in Karbala. Don't forget him. Again, they both sit quietly. Zahra says to him, Ya Ali, there is something else that I want from you. Says Zahra, what is it? Says, Ya Ali, غسلني بالليل, دفني بالليل, حنطني بالليل. Says, Ya Ali, give me ghusl at night. Ya Ali, give me hunut at night. Ya Ali, bury me at night. Give me kafan at night, so that the enemies don't know that I am being buried. For a short while, Amir al-Mu'mineen and Zahra, they stop. Then all of a sudden, Zahra begins to cry loudly. Amir al-Mu'mineen looks to her and says, Ya bint Rasulillah, I should be the one that is crying that you are leaving me. Why are you crying so loud? Says, Ya Ali, I worry what will happen to you after me. Ya Ali, what will you do after me? She sends Amir al-Mu'mineen to the masjid. She sends Hasanain alayhim salam to the houses of Bani Hashim. She turns to Asma. She says, Oh Asma, I'm going inside my room to do munajat with my Lord. Asma, as long as you hear the sound of my voice, know that I am alive. But the moment you no longer hear my voice, Asma, know that I have left this world. Asma says that I began pacing outside the door of Zahra. I could hear the recitation of Zahra, but a short while later, I could not hear anything. She says, I called out, Ya bint Rasulillah. There was no reply. Ya Sayyidati wa Mawlati. There was no reply. She says, I went inside the room. I saw the lifeless body of Zahra lying there. Not knowing what to do, I left the room. I closed the door. How will I tell Amir al-Mu'mineen? What will I tell Hasanain alayhim salam? How will I break the news to Zainab and Kulthum? She says, I was thinking this, and Hasanain alayhim salam, they entered in. They said, Oh Asma, where is our mother? I said to them, my imams, your mother is sleeping, allow her to sleep. They said to her, Asma, this isn't the time when our mother would usually sleep. She says, why don't you eat first before you go to your mother? They say to her, Asma, you know that we never eat without our mother. They realize something is wrong. They run. Imam al-Hassan runs ahead of Imam al-Hussein. He runs inside the room. He sees his mother. He calls out, Ya Ummah. He calls to Abu Abdullah, Oh Hussein, our mother has left this world. He throws himself on the chest of his mother. Imam al-Hussein comes running inside the room. He places his face on the feet of his mother. Ya Ummah, ana Husaynun, kallimini qabla an yufaraq ruhi min jasadi. Oh mother, it's me, your Hussein. Speak to me, mother, before my soul leaves my body. They say Ali was in the masjid, hearing a commotion. He sees Imam al-Hassan, Imam al-Hussein run inside the masjid, crying, calling out, Matat Ummuna Zahra. Our mother Zahra has died. They say the conqueror of Khaybar stood, the one whose feet never shook in any situation. Now when Ali stood, Waqa ala wajhi, Ali fell upon his face. The distance from the masjid to the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen is short, but the riwayat say that Ali stood and sat for a number of times before he reached towards his house. His Zahra is no longer with him. Amir al-Mu'mineen goes inside. he sends away all of the Muslims, the middle of the night, sends away everyone, says, go, the funeral of Zahra has been delayed. Asma and Amir al-Mu'mineen are in the room. And according to the narrations, Amir al-Mu'mineen is giving the ghusl to Zahra alayha salam from underneath a cloth in a dark room, because Zahra had said to him, Ya Ali, ghassilni billayl. Give me ghusl at night. Ya Zahra, why did you request the night? Why did you want Ali to give you kafan at night? Why did you want him to give you hunut and ghusl at night? Amir al-Mu'mineen requests all his children, says, no one cry loudly, so the enemies don't realize that we're about to bury your mother, that we are going to take her procession towards her grave. He says that all of the children sat there, the riwayat say, with their fingers in their mouth, trying to stifle their cries. Ali is there giving ghusl to Zahra in the dark room. Asma is pouring water. They say at one point, as Amir al-Mu'mineen passed his hand over the body of Zahra, they say that Ali pulled his hand away. He ran to the corner of the room. He placed his head on the wall. He began crying loudly, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra. Asma says to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, you requested us not to cry loudly. Ya Ali, why is it that you cry loudly? This is the reason, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Zahra had said, give her ghusl at night. Ali says, oh Asma, you have not been kind to Ali. You have not been just to Ali. Today, as my hand passed over the body of Ali, there was a dip in the rib cage of Zahra. Today, I have felt those wounds that my Zahra had hidden from me. Oh Asma, how did my Zahra take a breath? Oh Asma, now I understand. When my Zahra would stand, why she would hold on to the wall. Amir al-Mu'mineen completes the kafan of his wife. Last riwayah. He calls his children, he says, come, bid farewell to your mother. Come bid farewell to your mother. The children come towards, but the riwayah says Imam al-Hasan, Imam al-Hussein ran ahead of their sisters. They ran and they threw themselves on the body of their mother. They began crying loudly, wailing. Here the riwayah says something very odd. They say as Imam al-Hasan, Imam al-Hussein held on to the body of Zahra, crying, a voice came from the heavens, Ali, separate the children from their mother, for the angels of the heavens have begun to cry. There is only one other occasion in the riwayat where a voice is heard from heaven giving solace to an individual. Do you want to know where that place is? One here is in Medina, as Hussein is on the body of his mother. The second is in Karbala, as Hussein holds the lifeless body of his 6-month-old child Ali Asghar. فَبَكَى الْحُسَيْنِ بُكَاءً شَدِيدًا. Hussein was crying so loudly that a voice came from the heavens. Hussein, leave the child. We have wet nurses waiting for him in heaven. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. مات من حسين.